Welcome to the high-altitude hauntings of the Rockies. Beneath Colorado's majestic peaks lie dark gold rush secrets and century-old tragedies. From the infamous corridors of the Stanley Hotel to the mutilated graves beneath Cheesman Park, we unveil the top 15 most terrifying haunted places in the Centennial State. Lock your doors and dim your lights. This is where the Wild West's ghosts still roam. Number 1. The Stanley Hotel, Estes Park. High in the remote, majestic solitude of Estes Park, Colorado, stands a monument of opulence and dread, the Stanley Hotel. This beautiful Georgian-style structure, built by inventor Freeland Oscar Stanley, was intended as a restorative retreat. But its isolated grandeur has made it a permanent residence for the dead. The atmosphere is one of profound, echoing stillness, broken only by the whispers of history and something far more immediate. Guests speak of unearthly laughter on the 4th floor, where spectral children playfully tug on clothes and rearrange luggage. But the true epicenter of terror is room 297, where a 1911 gas explosion nearly killed the head housekeeper, Elizabeth Wilson. Her presence lingers today. Single male guests in 217 report waking up to find their blankets neatly tucked around them, while couples often experience unexplained separation in the night, a ghostly maid still tending her duties. Decades later, it was in this very room that a prominent horror author, after spending a desolate night as the hotel's sole guest, awoke from a terrifying nightmare of a living fire hose chasing his son through the halls. The story of that fateful night and the subsequent nightmare inspired his most famous novel, making the hotel world-renowned. And the accounts of strange occurrences there have been widely published in books and news features, cementing its legacy as one of America's most documented hauntings. When the power goes out and the long, empty corridors stretch before you, you must wonder, are the ghosts trying to scare you away? Or are they simply desperate for company? 2. The Molly Brown House, Denver. In the heart of Denver's historic Capitol Hill neighborhood, the stately Victorian mansion of Margaret Molly Brown, the famously resilient, unsinkable Molly Brown, a Titanic survivor, stands frozen in time. Yet her spirited presence refuses to acknowledge the year 1932, the date of her death. The atmosphere inside the ornate rooms is one of constant, subtle surveillance. Like the lady of the house has just stepped out and might return at any moment. Visitors and museum staff consistently report powerful supernatural phenomena, including the unmistakable aroma of a tobacco pipe wafting through rooms where smoking is strictly forbidden. A fragrant sign of her late husband, J. Brown. Molly herself, dressed in a Victorian gown, has been seen as a full-bodied apparition, occasionally in the upstairs rooms, rearranging the furniture to her preference, or turning corners only to vanish. Her indomitable spirit is matched by smaller, persistent details, such as light bulbs found inexplicably unscrewed from their sockets and the blinds in her daughter's room moving up and down on their own. The house's fame as a paranormal hotspot has been publicly acknowledged by the museum itself, which successfully runs special "Is Mrs. Brown Still Here?" ghost hunting tours and events, proving that the local legend is part of the home's enduring appeal. After surviving the sinking of the world's most famous ship, Molly Brown returned to her beloved mansion. The true question now is, did the unsinkable socialite manage to cheat death and, in doing so, anchor her formidable spirit to her treasured home forever. 3. Hotel Colorado, Glenwood Springs. Perched majestically in the mountain town of Glenwood Springs, the grand Italian Renaissance-style Hotel Colorado, opened in 1893, is a landmark steeped in high society, mob history, and profound shadow. The atmosphere within its walls is one of lingering decadence mixed with residual trauma, a stark legacy from its time as a U.S. Naval Convalescent Hospital during World War II. Guests frequently report unexplained elevator movements, lights flickering, and an eerie sense of being watched from the vast, empty hallways. The ghost of Bobby, a nurse allegedly murdered by a jealous officer during the hospital era, is a regular sighting, often seen near the dining room and recognized by the distinct, sweet scent of gardenia perfume, a fragrance from the 1930s that staff have confirmed is no longer used or even in production. Furthermore, the unmistakable smell of cigar smoke often wafts through the lobby late at night. A calling card of Walter, believed to be the hotel's founder or an early general manager still overseeing his property. The hotel's long and active paranormal reputation has earned it public recognition, including being named by a major historical travel organization as one of the top 25 most haunted historic hotels in America, with its long history of both presidential visits and patient deaths. The Hotel Colorado never truly checked out its former occupants. So, when you detect the sweet scent of perfume or the heavy aroma of cigar smoke in the middle of the night, you have to wonder, is that the spirit of a heartbroken nurse seeking justice, or a stern owner demanding quiet in his eternal hotel? 4. Cheesman Park, Denver. Cheesman Park, a serene, picturesque urban oasis in Denver, hides one of the darkest and most macabre secrets in American history. It was built directly atop a massive burial ground known as Mount Prospect Cemetery. The sense of unease in the park is not mere suggestion. Thousands of bodies, mostly unclaimed paupers and criminals, remain buried beneath the seemingly peaceful lawns. The horror began in the 1890s when the city hired a corrupt undertaker, E.P. McGovern, to relocate the remains. Paid by the coffin, McGovern notoriously employed grave robbers who hacked adult corpses into pieces, often mixing the bones of multiple bodies to fit them into smaller, cheaper, child-sized boxes to maximize profit. The ensuing scandal was so grotesque that the city abandoned the project, simply leveling the ground over the remaining thousands of mutilated and undisturbed bodies. Visitors today report a heavy sense of unexplained anxiety or dread that settles over them when they step onto the grass, and many claim to feel an unseen force pressing them down, making it almost impossible to rise. At night, shadowy figures and the phantom sounds of wailing or screaming are reported, believed to be the spirits of the poor souls whose final resting place was brutally desecrated. This horrifying history was widely documented at the time, with the Hauptpost Denver Republican newspaper famously publishing a scathing article headlined, "The Work of Ghouls," after the bone-littered scene was discovered, with so many tortured spirits lying just inches beneath the soil. You have to ask when you walk through Cheesman Park, are you enjoying a green space? Or are you simply treading on thousands of restless, desecrated graves? Maffei. Central City Masonic Cemetery, Central City, high above the historic gambling town of Central City. The Central City Masonic Cemetery stretches across a windswept hill, its weathered gravestones dating back to the violent, desperate days of the gold rush. The atmosphere here is one of profound isolation, where the wind carries not only the scent of pine, but the whispers of forgotten tragedies. The most enduring and heartbreaking enigma of this cemetery is the Columbine Lady, a beautiful, mysterious woman in a black satin dress who appears always on April 5th and November 1st to place fresh Columbine flowers on the grave of John Edward Cameron, a prominent young bachelor who died in 1887. Numerous eyewitnesses have confirmed seeing this mourning figure. But any attempt to approach her results in a terrifying phenomenon. She vanishes into thin air over the crest of the hill. Furthermore, visitors have frequently captured unexplainable orbs of light in photographs taken at night and report the unsettling sight of a ghostly little boy who playfully follows them among the headstones before disappearing into the trees. The story of the Columbine Lady and her recurring grief-stricken visits has been a persistent local legend for over a century and has been officially detailed in local historical records and bars. Gilpin County Historical Society. Tour literature. Confirming the identity of John Cameron and the dates of the ghostly visitations, with this spirit forever returning to the grave of her lost love. You have to wonder, is the Columbine Lady simply a devoted ghost? Or is she a tragic figure whose desperate sorrow is eternally tied to the very dust of Central City? 6. The Broadmoor Hotel, Colorado Springs. The Broadmoor Hotel, a lavish Italian Renaissance-style resort in Colorado Springs, has stood as an icon of luxury since 1918, but its grandeur cannot contain the troubled spirit of its co-founder. Julie Penrose, though she helped design its exquisite interiors. Tragedy found Julie when she mysteriously disappeared into the surrounding wilderness near the lake just days before her death in 1956, only to be found confused and unrobed. Unsure of how she got there, it is her restless spirit that now dominates the hotel's paranormal activity, particularly in the opulent penthouse she once occupied. Guests who stay in this restricted area report being overcome by a suffocating sense of dread and being watched. The struggling to breathe against the heavy, invisible pressure. Julie, determined to protect her space, has been reported to aggressively interact with the living. Some guests claim to wake up suddenly to feel their covers being violently ripped off, or even their foot being dragged right out of bed by an unseen force. The high incidence of strange phenomena has not been kept secret. A local magazine covering luxury living once highlighted the hotel's strange history, detailing the intense activity around the penthouse and the frequent sightings of a woman in a period dress gliding down the grand staircase. With a tragedy so close to her final moments, Julie Penrose seems trapped between worlds, eternally tied to the magnificent property she created. You have to wonder, is the ghost of the Broadmoor's Grand Dame simply trying to rearrange the furniture? Or is she desperately trying to pull the living into her unresolved, terrifying mystery? Cripple Creek, Teller County. Cripple Creek, a historic gold rush town tucked high in Teller County, is less a quiet community and more a sprawling, active nexus of supernatural energy. Widely rumored to be one of the most haunted cities in the United States. Its violent history, marked by bloody labor wars, daily homicides, and devastating fires, has ensured that its miners, gamblers, and victims never truly left. Today, this energy is focused in the casinos and hotels lining Bennett Avenue. At the Colorado Grand Casino. Yeah, the sound of phantom slot machines clanging and coins hitting the hopper is often heard late at night after closing. A chilling sound attributed to the town's most famous ghost, Maggie. This beautiful red-haired Irish spirit, dressed in turn-of-the-century attire, has been seen playing the modern slot machines despite them not existing in her lifetime. And her presence is often preceded by the distinct scent of rose perfume wafting down the halls. Cripple Creek also hosts the friendly but mischievous ghost of Lily, a young girl who haunts Buffalo Billy's casino, a solstice, leaving hand-drawn images and making purple balloons float on their own. Multiple local and regional historical documents, frequently cited by local ghost tours and historical societies, confirm the town's turbulent past and the pervasive, long-standing nature of these ghostly accounts. Cripple Creek may be seeking modern fortunes in gambling, but its halls are still filled with the loud, eternal residents of the Wild West. You have to wonder when you pull the lever on a slot machine in Cripple Creek. Are you trying to beat the house? Or are you actually gambling against the dead? 8. Victor Lowell Thomas Museum, Victor. The Victor Lowell Thomas Museum, housed in a formidable 1899 brick structure that once served as a hardware store and hotel during the roaring gold rush days, is now a repository of history and a host to the town's persistent spirits. The atmosphere inside the museum's quiet exhibits, filled with relics of gold miners and Victorian pioneers, is often disturbed by unnerving activity. Staff and visitors have repeatedly reported the sensation of an unexplained presence on the upper levels, accompanied by the distinct, disembodied voices of a small girl. One particularly strange phenomenon involves the possessions of the museum's namesake, famous author and traveler, Lowell Thomas. His eyeglasses have been reported to move inexplicably from their original resting place in one display room to another, a ghostly rearrangement that defies gravity and logic. More unsettling activity is reported in the dark basement, where paranormal investigations have captured shadowy images, including what appears to be a uniformed man standing amongst the deep shadows. The museum itself is a well-known spot for paranormal events, holding special evening investigations for the public, an occurrence publicized in local tourism and historical society guides that highlight the Gold Rush town's eerie folklore, with artifacts and memories from a violent, rich past filling every room. The spirits seem determined to keep their stories alive. You have to wonder, is the ghost of Lowell Thomas simply trying to find his missing spectacles? Or is a former gold miner forever searching for his lost claim among the museum's dusty artifacts? Nine. The Patterson Inn, Denver. The Patterson Inn, a formidable French chateau-esque mansion in Denver's Capitol Hill, is so famously and aggressively haunted that its original builder sold it after just months, claiming it was cursed. The mansion's stone walls are layered with tragedy, suicide, mysterious deaths, and the unspeakable horror of a child's burial. The atmosphere is dominated by phantom sounds, including the frequent, unsettling choo-choo cries of infants and small children, emanating from the third floor in the basement. In the basement, psychics confirmed the presence of a hysterically grieving mother and her dead child, leading to the discovery of a chamber behind a wall that contained a bizarre mixture of sand and possibly remains a chamber believed to be the baby's hidden burial site. More violently, in the 1970s, during a renovation, a massive brass and wood fireplace insert suddenly blew out of the hearth and across a room with a violent force, an event witnessed by the property's owner. One well-known anecdote involves a tenant who was pregnant with triplets. Unable to turn over in bed, she was aided by an apparition who whispered, "My name is Kate," the spirit of a former owner's wife. This chilling, confirmed incident was widely reported in local historical interest columns. The mansion's spiritual activity became so intense that 2 guard dogs left overnight during the renovation reportedly jumped to their deaths from a 3rd-story window rather than stay inside. When a house drives away the living and kills the guards, you have to ask, is the Patterson mansion simply haunted by ghosts? Or is there a truly malevolent force guarding the secrets buried deep within its walls? Monster 10. The Denver Children's Home, Denver. The Denver Children's Home. An imposing brick structure established in 1902 was originally the Denver Orphans' Home, founded to shelter children orphaned by the gold rush and mining crises. Despite its benevolent mission, the building is saturated with the residual sorrow and restless spirits of the young souls who pass through its doors. The air is often filled with the chilling, distant sounds of children's laughter, swiftly followed by the lonely, disembodied cries and whimpers of a deeply traumatized child. The most pervasive apparition is the ghostly figure of the bride, a beautiful woman dressed in white who is consistently seen floating up the 3rd-floor staircase or gliding across the 50-foot-wide 2nd-floor hallway before disappearing through a wall. Though her identity is unknown, some believe she is a grieving nurse or one of the founding women, forever watching over the vulnerable youth. The intense, tragic spiritual activity here is so well known that the building has been the site of multiple documented exorcisms, the 5th being conducted as recently as 1999, according to local reports covering the home's haunted past. Yet, even these rites have failed to quiet the spirits. The home's history, marked by a devastating fire in a previous location that claimed the lives of several children, leaves an inescapable spiritual footprint on the current facility. When you hear the sound of phantom footsteps padding down the long, empty halls, you have to ask, are these the spirits of the lost children? Or is the bride eternally seeking a rescue that never came? Buckhorn Exchange, Denver. The Buckhorn Exchange, Denver's oldest continually operating restaurant, is less a steakhouse and more a museum of the Wild West. A cavernous space where the scent of aged whiskey and prime beef mingles with the cold breath of the dead. Founded in 1893 by Shorty Scout Zeitz, a friend of Buffalo Bill Cody, the Exchange's ornate saloon and dining rooms attracted a volatile mix of miners, gamblers, railroaders, and outlaws. The paranormal activity here suggests that anyone who died near the establishment has chosen to make this historic structure their permanent watering hole. Diners and staff frequently report hearing disembodied footsteps and whispers in the upstairs dining hall when the room is entirely empty. And the large wooden tables have been seen moving or subtly vibrating on their own, with no apparent physical cause. Adding to the eerie atmosphere is the restaurant's bizarre decor. Hundreds of taxidermied animal heads, trophies of Zeetz's hunts line every wall, creating an illusion that the diners are being silently watched by 1,000 glassy eyes. The Buckhorn's status as a paranormal hotspot has been acknowledged by local historical groups, with many Denver ghost tours making it a mandatory stop, cementing the legends of its spectral clientele. The building's history of surviving the state's prohibition laws by running a bootlegging grocery. A clever survival tactic proves its resilience. But its spiritual residents are far less transient. When you sit down for a meal surrounded by the trophies of a bygone era, you must ask, is the table moving because a living waiter bumped it? Or because a ghostly cowboy is trying to pull up a seat to join your dinner? On 12, Fort Collins Armory, Fort Collins. The Fort Collins Armory, a historic structure now serving as a modern performance venue, holds a much darker, untold history beneath its polished floors. While the building's official function has changed, the site has been tragically linked to one of the region's most horrific accidents. It was once used as a temporary morgue and storage area for the bodies of the victims, many of them young children killed in a devastating 1961 school bus and train collision. The air within the venue, particularly in the basement and service areas, is therefore charged with overwhelming grief and residual terror. Though staff often try to dismiss the claims, many have reported seeing dark, indistinct shadow figures and experiencing sudden, icy drafts in the corners of the venue when no doors are open. The spirits seem particularly attached to noise. Phantom sounds of a crowd, whispers, and even disembodied music have been heard when the hall is empty. Furthermore, the spiritual activity at the Armory is so notorious that local ghost tour operators frequently cite its history, though some purposely avoid telling the full story of the tragedy, believing the energy is too strong and too sensitive to provoke. This facility, now filled with the sound of live music, is also host to the trauma of young lives cut short, forever echoing in the quiet moments between sets. You have to wonder, when the band plays and the crowd cheers, are the living the only ones enjoying the show? Or are the shadows in the corner simply the last audience of a tragedy? St. Elmo Ghost Town, Chaffee County, nestled high in the Sawatch Range. St. Elmo is hailed as Colorado's most impeccably preserved ghost town. A breathtaking collection of wooden buildings frozen in their 1880s gold rush heyday. The air here is thin and cold, charged not only by the altitude, but by the enduring presence of those who refuse to leave. The town's most famous resident is Bainstro Annabelle Dirty Annie Stark. A fierce, eccentric woman who lived in the abandoned town long after the last train left in 1922, famously patrolling the empty streets with a shotgun. Her spirit remains, acting as a permanent, watchful guardian. Visitors and part-time residents have witnessed curtains twitching in the windows of the vacant Home Comfort Hotel. And one skier reported seeing a lovely woman in a white dress glaring out of a second-story window, only for the figure to nod and vanish after a group of noisy snowmobilers passed by. More frighteningly, Chris Connell, a modern owner of the old general store, publicly reported hearing unmistakable saloon piano music and laughter when the building had no power, and witnessed a never-wound clock gain 6 hours on its own. The legend of Annabelle's protective and often aggressive haunting of the town is a core component of local historical accounts, confirming that many spirits remain vigilant. As you walk the creaking boardwalks of St. Elmo. You have to ask if you were to reach out to touch one of the dusty, antique windows. Would you feel the glass or the cold, proprietary hand of Annabelle Stark? Number 14, University of Northern Colorado, Greeley. The University of Northern Colorado, UNC in Greeley, is widely considered one of the most intensely haunted college campuses in America. With supernatural claims tied to nearly every building, the atmosphere in the older dormitories is one of persistent, juvenile mischief from beyond the grave. The most infamous resident is Edith, a spirit primarily haunting Weepking and Wilson Halls, where legend claims she tragically hanged herself in the attic. Current students experience her eternal game. They report waking up to find their furniture mysteriously moved and hearing the chilling sound of marbles rolling across the ceiling or the attic floor. A persistent sound believed to be Edith's favorite pastime from life. Another unique spectral resident is Stony Ghosty, a former student said to haunt Turner Hall, whose presence is heralded by the unmistakable, persistent smell of burnt marijuana. A ghostly reminder of his fatal struggle with drugs. The extent of these ongoing paranormal occurrences is so great that a regional newspaper publicly ranked UNC as one of the country's most haunted campuses, noting the consistent nature of the reports passed down through generations of students and staff. Even the housing operations director, a self-proclaimed skeptic, admitted to hearing unexplained doors violently slam shut while alone in the dormitories. When the school's own website details the ghosts students can expect to encounter, you have to ask, do the students here simply get a degree, or do they graduate with a haunting companion? Kinnan, Colorado Prison Museum, Canyon City. The Museum of Colorado Prisons in Canyon City is housed in the former women's cell block, a grim institutional structure built adjacent to the still active Colorado Territorial Correctional Facility, Old Max. The atmosphere is profoundly heavy and macabre, saturated with the suffering and trauma of over a century of incarceration, executions, and despair. The exhibits themselves, including the state's last gas chamber and confiscated inmate weapons, are believed to act as anchors for the dead. Visitors consistently report encountering highly intelligent and interactive spirits, inmates and staff alike, even when the prison wing was still in use, reported hearing disruptive, persistent crying emanating from cell 18, even though the cell was completely unoccupied. More chillingly, visitors have claimed to hold full, whispered conversations with phantom inmates, including one named Walter, who chillingly boasted of having killed 3 children. The museum actively leans into its reputation, frequently hosting paranormal investigation nights, an event widely publicized in local and regional tourism guides, confirming its status as a major nexus for dark spiritual activity. Sharing a stone wall with an active, maximum security prison means the barrier between the living and the dead here is dangerously thin. When you walk past the preserved cell blocks and feel a cold breath whisper a name into your ear, you have to ask, is the ghost telling you a story? Or is it simply confessing a final, eternal crime? The air is thin and the spirits are restless. After seeing the Patterson Inn, Cripple Creek, and the Prisons Museum, Which Colorado ghost is the most terrifying? Hit subscribe for more haunting history. And tell us in the comments which dark secret you think is the creepiest.